So this is a photo of my family. And the tall, pretty girl in the front row, she's my mom. It was actually taken shortly before her life would forever change. In 1975, the communists took over Cambodia. The Khmer Rouge toppled the government, and they forced millions of people into the countryside at gunpoint. And over the next 4 years, roughly 2 million people died, including my grandmother and half the children in this photo, in what we now know as the killing fields. When the Khmer Rouge fell in 1979, my mom was finally free, but she had nowhere to go. Her home had been looted, her family devastated, and her country destroyed. So she walked, like thousands of other Cambodians. Their goal was to get to a refugee camp in Thailand in the hopes that someone, anyone there, could help them rebuild their lives. And in order to get there, my mom, grandfather, and her 2 surviving siblings, they relied on other people for help. Some would carry the small children, too hungry and exhausted to move on. And others, they would search the forest for food, hoping and praying to avoid one of the millions of landmines that had been planted during the war. Everything they did during their flight, it was completely interdependent. And for them, that interdependence, it was a matter of life or death. After a few years at the refugee camp, my family got some good news. They were the lucky ones, chosen to be resettled in the United States. And this is a really big deal. Because of the 21 million refugees today, less than 1% of them will ever be resettled. Now, when my family got here, they had no money, no assets, nothing. But despite the odds, they survived. And not only that, they crushed it. But really, when you consider the limited resources and opportunities they've had, so many refugees, just like my family, have been so successful in this country. And in light of the biggest refugee crisis we've seen since World War II, it really begs the question, how is that possible? How did we get from people like my mom, a survivor of genocide, to people like me, just 1 generation removed, enjoying privileges like higher education, economic opportunity, and so much more? We got here because of that interdependence. And that same team mentality that helped my mom survive is alive in refugee communities around the world today. We hear so much about refugees, and almost all of it is negative. But there's another side to the story here. It's a story of triumph, of empowerment, and what I call the collective success mindset, the belief that each one of us has an important role to play in the success of the community. And there are big lessons we can learn from this. I believe the collective success mindset we've seen in refugees can actually improve the way we do business. And despite what you may think, the refugee collectivist mindset and the self-interested foundations of capitalism are not in conflict with each other. They're actually complementary. Because if growing up in my community has taught me anything, is that there doesn't have to be a trade-off between value for you and value for others, which means businesses, they could be even more successful if they took a page from the refugee playbook. And the lesson on that first page is to create cultures of empowerment. Before I was born, a young man named Sunny came to live with my family. He had spent years living in one of those Thai refugee camps, similar to the one my mom had come from. But my dad, he'd been granted political asylum in this country years before, so he took Sunny in and he enrolled him in school. But because war had wreaked havoc on Sunny's life, Sunny had never been to school. And because Sunny had never been to school, 14-year-old Sunny was placed in kindergarten. Understanding how difficult it was to start all over with nothing, my dad not only provided Sunny with a home, but with counseling to accelerate his learning, both inside and outside the classroom. And today, that 14-year-old kindergartner, he's an engineer and a proud American citizen who works with our intelligence communities to fight the real terrorists. If you ask my dad, his actions were neither heroic nor charitable in my community. Rather, they reflected his sense of duty, a duty that exists amongst established communities of former refugees to empower and help the next wave. And this lesson has really stuck with me. So I can't help but wonder, what if we had a sense of duty to empower each other and help business succeed? It's actually not a crazy idea. Jumani founder Hamdi Lukaya has created a brand that dominates Greek yogurt. But even in all his success, Lukaya recently did something remarkable. He voluntarily gave up to 10% of his company to his workers. And doing so was the best decision he could have made, because some research shows that employee-owned companies, they tend to outperform the competition. Because when everyone has skin in the game, they're far more likely to make sure the whole succeeds. What Chobani shows us is that business doesn't have to be a zero-sum game. And what I mean is the belief that we're burdened with costs when we help other people is just such an outdated approach to the way value is actually created. Instead, when you empower others, the whole team advances. Leading me to playbook lesson number 2. Communities can shorten the race. When my mom was resettled here, she lived in close proximity to other refugees. So growing up, we would go to grocery stores and hair salons and other small businesses owned by fellow Cambodians. And a lot of these small business owners, they were also patrons of my dad's accounting practice. You see, my parents chose to spend their money at Cambodian-owned businesses because they knew that money would directly go back into helping the community, which would also help my family. Now, to outsiders, us choosing to patronize Cambodian-owned businesses looks like an unwillingness to assimilate. And this criticism isn't just limited to my community. Refugees, and really all immigrants, they get criticized all the time for not assimilating fast enough. But here's what's really going on. What appears to be a lack of assimilation is actually the power of collective buying in action. And this is really important because as those communities become more successful, it actually shortens the assimilation process for the next wave. What this means is, as a consumer, where you choose to spend your money really matters. What if we chose to spend our money at businesses that reflected our values? If enough of us did so, wouldn't that compel others to follow suit? The way we spend our money could shorten the race because it makes it easier and faster for businesses to adopt good policies and make those policies the norm. And just consider IKEA. The company is taking an offensive position and doing something I think is really great. By 2020, IKEA aims to make 100% of its supply chain sustainable. And in order to do this, it's having to radically alter the way it designs, collects, and recycles furniture. And this is leading to the development of new business models that, if done correctly, could get replicated by other big companies around the world. And when the power of collective buying compels more of them to do so, we all win. Leading me to the final page of the playbook. Capitalism is best played as a team sport. When the economy crashed in 2008, my family's financial stability crashed and burned with it. In a flash, my refugee parents once again found themselves in a bad situation. But my community, they rallied around us. Like good defensive players, they protected us from taking more hits. They cooked us meals, dropped off groceries, and lent us a car so we could drive to work and school. However big or small their efforts, they did so much just to make us a little happier every day and give us the strength to get back up on our feet and get back into the game. If you were in trouble, would your company step up to help you? And would you do the same thing if your company was in trouble? For the employees and the management team at Lincoln Electric, the answer would be yes. What's remarkable about this company is that despite numerous economic downturns, it hasn't laid off a single employee in almost 70 years. Because when times are tough, everyone shares the burden, from the CEO down to the workers on the line. They make sacrifices, like taking reduced wages and hours, because they know that in order to weather the storm, it's an all-hands-on-deck effort. And when the company is thriving, everyone enjoys the security. And by the way, this impressive streak hasn't come at the expense of the company. Today, Lincoln Electric remains highly profitable and the market leader in its industry. Just like refugee communities, Lincoln Electric shows us that we are all stronger when we think and act as a team. When we stick our necks out just a little bit for the person standing to our right and to the person standing to our left, we're far more likely to get the help that we need in return. I stand here on this stage today as a product of the collective success mindset that ran through the veins of my parents' refugee community. And it's because of that mindset that I went to college and graduate school, and now I work in business. So to me, the idea that capitalism and collectivism are actually complementary, it just couldn't be more obvious. Just imagine all the value we could create if businesses could apply these refugee lessons into the way they do things today. They could become accelerators for good policies that benefit all of us just by shifting the mindset from the individual to the group. And the world is moving in this direction. Big companies like Airbnb, Facebook, and Patagonia, they realize the value of community and they're integrating it into the way they do things today. But they can't do it alone. No one person or company can. Because while good teams win games, it's cohesive teams that win championships. So what if we adopted the refugee playbook and worked as a team to create a better future for not just any one person, but for all of us? Thank you.